Everybody. I'm Marc Willson, and I'm a retail restaurant hospitality strategist. And I've been doing that. I formed the Willson Company in 2009. I actually resurrected my great grandfather's company. So my business card says the Willson Company established in 1866. So, the reason I know that is I'm a botanist by education, a plant scientist, and a biologist. And I spent 4 decades in the retail restaurant hospitality business. So, I kind of wondered how that happened and why. And long story short, I did research on my lineage and my ancestors. Turns out my great grandfather was a general in the Civil War. And when the war ended, he was in Pennsylvania, he mustered out of Pennsylvania. He gathered up 300 people and took a wagon train from Pennsylvania to Bozeman, Montana, and opened the Willson Mercantile in 1866. Turns out this was in my DNA and in my blood all along. I just didn't know it. So the Willson Company established in 1866. So I'm retained by the state of Virginia, so I teach here a lot. And I also teach across the country. In years past, it was all done with traveling and going to towns, but for a couple of years now, it's been mostly virtual for good reason. I mean, we are the only living generation that's lived through a pandemic. Because think about the last major pandemic, 1918 Spanish flu. Well, that was a long time ago. So, those folks are over 100 years old if they're still alive. In fact, I saw on the news just recently that the oldest survivor of the Spanish flu just succumbed to COVID. I think she was 104 or 106. But anyway. So, COVID's going to work its way through this morning's webinar, and we're still dealing with it. We got to a point where we thought we had it in retreat, but the Delta variant and the surging COVID cases, particularly in states like Texas and Florida, we're going backwards. We've got to be very careful. So if you want to get the overriding message I have for retail restaurants and hospitality in small towns, it's side on the side of safety. I don't really care what the mandates are by the state. I think you ought to provide a safe environment for yourself, your employees, and your customers by wearing masks and practicing distancing and have a clean and antiseptic place for people to shop in. And a robust e-commerce site, so if people decide to stay home and shop with you, they can do that. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit of a backdrop. Let's go ahead without further ado and get moving here. So most of you can see me, but there I am. And I just wanted to say quickly that at one point I ran 105 clothing stores. And so I can put a shirt and tie on and get dressed up. But typically, I try to be in sync with my audience. And my wheelhouse really is rural America. It's, I'm not going to Washington, D.C. to tell people what to do. I'm usually in a rural town somewhere in one of the states in the United States. So I'm more rurally oriented, mom and pop oriented. But there I am, cleaned up. So let's talk about some trends and lessons we should have learned over the last several months. Let's talk about what's been going on. Again, the title of this webinar is, Guide to Retail Renewal, and it might take some secret sauce. And I'll explain what that is as we go. So let's talk about some trends going on during the COVID pandemic and what's been happening. Well, listen to this. For every store that closed in 2020, 5 companies are opening new stores. So that might not be the mom and pops, but there are stores opening, and look down to the second to the last bullet point on this slide, reverse e-commerce. Now, what do you think that means? It means that digital plays that were digital only, meaning online only, are now opening physical stores. And two good examples to give you is Amazon and Warby Parker. Do people know Warby Parker? They're the eyeglass company that started as an e-commerce play, but now are opening physical stores. Here's a statistic that might surprise you. I think I'll ask Greg this question first. Unmute yourself, Greg. What percentage of commerce in the United States is done online?
Ooh.
So think about that. I'm talking about Amazon and Walmart and everybody else that's online. How much of our commerce is done online?
I got to figure that my teenage daughter is probably responsible for about 7% of all of it.
All true, man.
I think probably I'm gonna say we're getting somewhere around halfway, right? I mean, I think there's still a lot that's happening in person, but I mean, I'm just gonna say 50%.
Okay, so all the pundits are saying, it's going to go 50 to 70% online. But I think they're really talking about chain stores and big boxes. And I don't think mom and pops will ever go to 50 or 70%. The secret sauce and the four-wall store are too important to the overall concept. But listen to this. It's only 15%. The rest of it's done in physical stores. So all is not lost, gang. No woe is me. Don't cry on your spilt milk. There's plenty of, listen, in the last several months, I've gotten out and started visiting some towns again. And I'll tell you this, 50% of who I met with were ahead of last year. So if you pivoted well, like we all, we've been telling you to do for months, then there's opportunity. There's an opportunity to do just fine and do even better than just fine and do better than last year. So part of the, I told you the title of the seminar is, Retail Renewal, take some secret sauce. Well, I told this to the group before we went live this morning. I go to a lot of towns. I've been to over 1,000 towns in America. And I always say, I can go anywhere and I'll find you somebody that's doing just fine. And people say, well, how do they do that? I mean, the town's struggling. Everybody knows struggling. Walk-in traffic was down 50% last holiday, and here's the deal. If you pivoted well, you have an opportunity to do as much business as you did before, and if not more. So let me just real quick remind you what pivoting is. It's not only changing the way you currently did business so that you were more relevant to a customer that had been affected by COVID, but we were encouraging you to find new revenue streams as well. So there's opportunity out there. And what I mean by that is this, some stores just weren't financially prepared to make it through COVID. A store that's hanging on by its fingernails, that's been told that walk-in traffic will be down 50%, that's enough to be their death knell. That's enough to put them out of business. And we all know that some stores have gone out of business over the last 2 years based on financial difficulty. Do you know, this stat? The average small business only has 8 weeks of working capital saved. So if you only have 8 weeks and you ran into last, 2020's middle of the year and most of us were closed for a couple months, then that was enough to really cause a demise. And here's the opportunity there. every one of those stores had categories that sold well. So have you asked the previous owners of stores that had to close which categories were their top 20% and the names of those vendors to see if you can pick up the lines they did well with? That's an opportunity right there. The other opportunity is every store should have an email list. Somebody should be asking the stores that were forced to close what they've done with their email lists. And if you can get a copy of it and reach out to those customers to tell them that you've picked up some of the lines in those stores and that you're here and still here in this town to service them as guests. So that's an opportunity as well. So
Rick, we've got a question in the chat.
yeah, shoot.
Somebody asked, they said, I want to start a retail store, but am concerned about the supply chain scare that is happening. Is that just affecting stores that obtain merchandise from overseas, or is it a concern for within the US as well? Thoughts? And she's wondering if she should move forward.
No, let me answer that question. Listen, there are two big 800-pound gorillas in the room. The two biggest issues that I've been talking to my clients about is hiring. Hiring is going to be difficult, has been difficult, and will continue to be difficult. And the second big problem is the supply chain. Have you seen the pictures of the boats, the tankers that are sitting in the harbor in the Pacific Ocean outside LA trying to get unloaded? There's dozens of ships waiting to be unloaded. That's where the fall and holiday product is. It's sitting on those boats. And, there has been lots of articles written about how difficult the toy business is going to be this Christmas because most of our toys come from China. And China is an issue right now. So don't want to paint a dismal picture, but those two problems are big and they're real. So it's not just product coming from overseas, although a ton of our product comes from there, but it's in the US as well. My wife works for a furniture company, and it used to be 6 to 8 weeks to get a sofa from them. It's now 6 to 8 months. And it's not because of the sofa, it's because of the foam, the fabric, the steel, and the wood that goes in the sofa is out of supply. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from opening a business right now because I think there's a ton of opportunity, but you have to be aware of the supply chain problem. And I've been saying it for months. Get all your eggs out of one basket. You need, even though you love your top vendors and you've been selling their product maybe for years, you need plan B. You need a backup to get your best product. And I'm assuming most of you know the 80-20 rule, which is 20% of your inventory produces 80% of your revenue. And the other favorite 80-20 rule for me is 20% of your customers produce 80% of your revenue. So the small business owner has to always be looking at who are my customers, what am I selling to them, and how do I find more of each? Okay, let's proceed with the rest of this slide here. Another huge issue right now is data security and privacy. People want to be able to know that they can give you their credit card information. They'd prefer to be able to wave it in front of your terminal and give it to you online if you need it, if they're shopping online. But people have asked me in the past, well, how do you know if a website's safe to put your credit card information in? And the answer to that question is the site will say it. The site will say we've protected you. We're a safe and secure site. We encrypt everything, and you're safe to shop with us. In the e-commerce world, one of the biggest pain points is the point in which the customer has to pay you. And everybody right now is looking for contactless and frictionless payment opportunities. And that's something you absolutely need to make sure you have in your store, restaurant, or hotel right now as a way for customers to pay you safely, frictionless, and contactless. Okay, another thing that's happening right now is resale. So we have two polar opposites that I'll talk to you about in another slide. But what you got is the ultra wealthy, the top 5%, are richer and wealthier than they've ever been. And they're after ultra luxury products. The top 5% want to spend their money on ultra luxury. But most of the rest, I would say 30 to 50% of the rest of the population is in the middle class, lower middle class, or I think 30% of the population is close to poverty. So you've got two polar opposites of the consumer out there. And resale is important to the customers that are looking to save money, looking for value, and looking for ways to buy product in a value-driven way. And that's resale. People are buying product that's been owned before. So thrifting, especially upscale thrifting, has become very, very popular. So resale has become a popular point. Social commerce, what's that mean? Well, that means selling directly from Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. I always add Pinterest because a lot of people don't think about that. But if you have a visual product, a visual compelling product, Pinterest is the best place to put it. And if you have a female customer, the Pinterest customer is 83% female. So being able to sell directly off those social commerce channels, and you can do that, and it doesn't have to be routed through your website. They can buy directly from Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook. Hey, interesting with Facebook yesterday. My goodness, went offline for a couple hours. Almost everybody started freaking out. The whole world started freaking out. Well, we got to be careful with that. I mean, just look at the impact that Facebook has on the world and what 2 or 3 or 4 hours being down did to the whole world. Social conscious. So the consumer today wants you to be involved in causes and believe in, sustainability and diversity and treating manufacturers, employees correctly. And, they want you to be aware of the world, and they want you to be giving back to not only your charitable groups, but just giving back to your community as well. Texting is marketing. The most efficient and the most successful way to market to your customers is with texts, not emails. So the big difference there is the average text is looked at within 15 to 20 seconds. The average email is looked at within a couple hours, maybe sometime during the day. So email takes a lot longer to get any reaction from. So texting has become a very popular form of marketing. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've been getting more and more texts from companies trying to market to me, as opposed to one of my friends or colleagues texting me. And some find that annoying, and it might, text might hit the same battleground that emails have, and that there's oftentimes you go down your email list and you just delete if you don't know who it is. So, even your emails have to be unique and something special for you to stand out from the rest. And lastly, retailtainment. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody doesn't want to catch the virus, but right now they want to be entertained by you. They're lonely. They're tired of working out of their home. They're tired of being at home. They're tired of not seeing their relatives, their colleagues, and everybody is socially starved. And we all know that social media is not real socialization. So people are starved for the human contact. It's in our DNA. We're social beings. So they want to be entertained. And that has to do with the secret sauce as well. And again, I'll talk a little bit that in a second. So let's then move on to lingering challenges. What's going on from a challenge standpoint, you know? So one is that if you created a good e-commerce site, and I believe, by the way, that Shopify is probably one of the best and the easiest and the biggest to get you, could give you help in getting an e-commerce site up. I'll tell you, you could be up, if you don't even have an e-commerce site today, you could use Shopify to be up and running in a day or two. And I'm telling you, you might say, well, I have 500 SKUs to put online. You do, but you're not going to put 500 SKUs online. You know what you're going to do? You know what you're going to start with? Greg, what do you think they ought to start with?
Well, the 20% that gets them the 80% of the revenue, right?
Exactly. That's the right answer, Greg.
You could probably even, but still 20% of 500 SKUs is still a lot of SKUs though.
So the first thing that goes up is that top 20%. And that's what you get up first. So anyway, Shopify is one that, but one of the reasons I bring up Shopify is they have a point of sale system that's really good. And what it does is it has the ability to manage two inventories, your in-store inventory and your online inventory, because you are now managing two inventories. What you need to have online to satisfy those sales, and then what you need to have in your store to make the store look good and for you to merchandise your store and make it, you know, curb appeal, and 40% of what you sell is a result of it being in your window. So you got to have good windows and curb appeal and all those things that go hand in hand with physically shopping in your store. So dual inventory management is an important one. Hiring staff, I've already brought that up, but it's going to be as difficult as it's ever been. And here are the two big reasons for hiring being so difficult. One is the stipend that was put on top of unemployment for, I don't know, a good year or so. In many cases, people in the service industry ended up making more money on unemployment than they made working for you. So they're unemployed and not bothered with it. Well, the stipend's over though, so I think some of those folks are going to have to go back to work. The other thing that happened is people had a year and a half to really soul search and decide whether they wanted to work in a service industry or not. They've decided, you know, retail is a hard way to make a living. Restaurants, hard way to make a living. Hotels, hard way to make a living. You know what it is? It's as much work-life balance as it is anything else. Today's employee is more concerned about their work-life balance than I ever was, and that you ever were, Greg, when you were a young man working out there. You know, we never questioned it. We worked our butts off. Well, today people are questioning that. And, you know, and one of the things that I tell stores and restaurants is, it's not just the wage. It's just not the living wage you got to be worried about. And, you know, it is important that you can pay people enough that they can either rent or buy a place to live in your town. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues we have in the country, is a good portion of the population doesn't make enough money to rent an apartment in your town or buy a house. So living wage is important, but just as important to the worker today is flexibility. So the retailer and restaurants have to start looking at swing shifts and shifts that aren't 8 to 10 to 12 hours long. You're going to have to give people more flexibility. And that's one of the things I want you to think about, is it's not just the wage, it's the lifestyle and flexibility that you can, and a safe place to shop. One of the reasons people don't want to be in the public sector is because the virus is still out there. I mean, don't kid yourself. The virus is still out there. Okay, next point, access to capital and loan repayments. Okay, if you got the first EIDL loan or PPP loan, it's due to be forgiven or paid back. So there's money out there, and it was a second tranche of financing, and there's some local statewide things going on, like right now, like Rebuild Virginia and things like that have grants. But money and access to capital has always been an issue, and it still is. And it's still confusing. But here's my advice. Always use experts to help you, especially if they don't cost anything. And guess what the SBDC is? A network of experts, and they can help you. So reach out to your local SBDC advisor if you're having trouble with your loans and financing and those kinds of things, because they can help you. And if they can't, they are connected. You know, there's 27 SBDCs in Virginia, but there's 1,200 of them across the United States. And we have access to all of them. And we can get answers from other SBDCs if we don't have it in-house. Okay, so financing. And then you have, listen, everybody feels strongly one way or the other about the pandemic and wearing masks and distancing and schools and everything else. So there's strong and divergent feelings right now, and things are going to be a bit awkward for a while. In fact, I've read articles that say this pandemic will linger over us for at least 10 years. And here's the other thing I found out. Greg, you'll find this interesting. I hope the other attendees do as well. This is a mammal to mammal virus. The virus came from a mammal and it's being spread to mammals. And history shows us that these viruses are the hardest to eradicate. So I'm here to tell you, I'm a believer, this is my opinion, but I think you'll be getting a booster yearly for a while. I think it's going to become like the flu shot. And in the meantime, I just want you to land on the side of safety and provide a safe place for you and your employees and your customers to shop in. But no, it's going to be awkward. No, it's going to be tenuous for a while. Okay, shopping experiences. I already told you about these niche normals, the polarization mirroring the widening socioeconomic gap in the United States. You know, there's a 10-year high of the gap between the top 5% and the lower 50%, let's say. So it's real and it's happening, and ultra luxury and discount markets are alive and well. But what's happening is that middle ground, the middle class, and the product that the middle class used to buy is moving one direction or the other. And so are they in the economic social status. So most middle class have either moved up the ladder or down the ladder. And that provides new opportunities in ultra luxury and discount markets. The importance of your special sauce. What does that mean? Well, here's the special sauce. Let me finally tell you what it is. It usually comes from the owner of the store. And if the owner isn't the primary manager of the store, and there's someone else there day in and day out, then it's probably coming from them. But it's the leader of the store, and it's what they create within the four walls. It's the energy, it's the vibration, it's the culture, it's the people they've hired. You know, they need to hire people that are in love with their store. In fact, one of my rules is don't hire a part-timer that's never shopped in your store. For goodness sakes, let's make sure they know who you are, and let's make sure they're as in love with your product and the culture of your store as you are. And you want people leaving the store saying, you know, they treat me like family. The other thing you want to say is, I can't wait to tell my friends, neighbors, colleagues, and relatives about this place I found. It's fabulous. It's unique. It's one of a kind. And those two things should be goals of yours in your store. It should be, you know, I used to say to my salespeople, you know, see that person coming in the door? I want you to give them the best 45 minutes they have today, worthy of telling their friends and neighbors about it. The other thing is personalization. A small store can personalize the relationship they have with their customers. And big boxes and chain stores can't. So I want you to know your customers, top 20% customers, names, first names, and I want you shopping for them. I want you being the personal shopper, and your associates should do this as well. I want you shopping for your good customers all the time. And back in the day, we used to pick up the phone and call our best customers. Guess what? We just got a sport coat in, has your name on it. Based on what you bought from me in the past, you don't have this. You don't have a Harris tweed blazer. So it's that personalization you can do. And you know why people shop in a small store? Greg, why do you think people go to small stores anyway? Certainly the inventory isn't as vast as a chain store or a big box.
No, they want that. They want that interaction. They want the kind of the concierge piece of it, right? I mean, they can go and get something online. Amazon is a great way to get a very particular thing when you know you need the next book in the series. So
Yeah.
you know you got this, I'll admit I do not have any tweed blazers, but if I was looking for one, I would want somebody to help me pick one out, right?
You're right. You're exactly
I
right.
need the help doing it.
Yes. So the answer I always look for and give is people shop in a small store because they know they're that much closer to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner cares about them. The owner does a happy dance when you buy from them in a small store. The guy that's punched a ticket to work at Walmart doesn't give a hoot about you. He doesn't care. In fact, he or she doesn't care. In fact, so sorry, my phone started talking to me for some reason. So they want somebody they can trust, and they want an experience that's, it's like being a member of their family and people looking out for you. So yeah, that special sauce is that whole vibe you get when you go in a store. And we talked about this early on before we got started, but you can tell. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a strategist to know whether a store is humming and working on all cylinders or that it's not, and the staff not getting along, or there's discord or something going on in there because there's a bad vibe going on in here. So know that. So what are some of the opportunities going on right now in the bricks and mortar space? Well, what we're finding is that there are three big buckets of expenses for a business, for an independently owned business. And those three big buckets are these. You got cost of goods sold. So you got to buy your inventory. So that's a big bucket. You've got payroll. So payroll is a big number and usually a big bucket. So payroll is expensive usually. And lastly, you got rent or mortgage. You got to pay for the space if you don't own the building. And if you own the building, you're probably still paying a mortgage unless you have the wherewithal to buy it outright. So those are the three big buckets. And during a tough time, you need to sharpen your pencil, and you need to be looking at some of those big numbers and whether you can shave some expenses off the bottom line. So the lower the bottom line is, the higher the top line will be. So some of the things that are going on right now are some retailers are trying to share their space with a couple of their vendors. They're trying to sublease space to other vendors to split the rent with them. A great example of that is most small towns have an empty department store, because back in the day, in the 30s and 40s, the department store was downtown in your small town. And it's probably moved to the bypass or moved somewhere else, but it's not downtown anymore. So most small towns have this big space to fill. And how do they fill it? They split it up and lease it to several stores. It's the only way to fill a big space, because there's not a lot of independently owned retailers that can lease, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 square foot space. So reducing space, sharing space, using pop-up shops to take your business where the traffic is. That's used quite often during peak selling seasons, particularly during the holidays. Pop-ups are popular. So this idea of trying to save some money in the rent and mortgage piece is real and it's happening. So trying to share space. I've talked about selling through channels and digital security and safety, but this is a real deal. There are too many people that I meet with that do a ton of their business off Facebook and Instagram. But know this, I'm a firm believer in this. Your website is the most important marketing tool you have, whether you're e-commerce or not. Your marketing website is incredibly important. And the website's important for a number of reasons, but this is one of the biggest. Your website gets you found by Google. And in America, you need to be on the first page of Google results, or an American won't find you. Americans tend to be time sensitive and lazy, and they're not going to go 2, 3, 4 pages into the results. They think you ought to be on the first page of results. Most people do. So the top half dozen stores that are on that first page get most of the traffic. So a good website that's a link to other sites and that has reviews on it and testimonials and has good SEO will get you found by Google. Now, here's another idea I have for you. This is worth coming to today's webinar for. Greg, who owns YouTube?
Google owns YouTube.
Google owns YouTube. Correct answer once again. What do you think they look for first when they do a search?
In Google?
Yeah. What do you think Google's spy bots look for first when they start doing the search?
People who are playing with Google.
That,
including YouTube.
and they look for video because they own YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a suggestion I have for every business out there. I want you to put a 30-second video onto the home page of your website. 30 seconds, because that's the attention span of an adult. In fact, if you read the most recent articles, it's down to 9 seconds because that's how often an adult or a child looks at their mobile phone. Every 9 seconds. So that's the attention span now of an adult is 9 seconds. So 30 seconds is all you got. And I want it to be, and I'm borrowing this from a colleague of mine, I want it to be your destination statement. What's a destination statement? It's this. I want you to finish this statement. But depending on the truth and what you can claim, I am the only store in Louisa, Virginia, that, and I want you to finish that sentence. And if you're the only store in your county that does what you do, if you're the only store, restaurant, or hotel in the state of Virginia that does what you do, you need to tell people what it is. You can eat, now that you're probably e-commerce, you're global. You may be the only business in the world that does what you do. And I want you to tell the customer what it is that you do that makes you unique. And unique, definition of unique is one of a kind. So I'm the only, and listen, things like open 100 years, third generation hardware store, established in 1930, longevity is a differentiator. I mean, the longer you've been in business, the more credible you are, because it's not easy to be in business. So that's a great, and you ought to also end that video with a real quick, and here's what I've done to make it safe for you to shop with us. And tell them what you've done to your store and your website address and how easy it is to shop with you online as well. Okay? Shopping experiences. I think this is great. I found this on the internet. And it's in the window of a vacant store in a small town called, well, I don't know what the town is, but it's on Moulton Street. And read what's on this window. Hello there. I've created these temporary spaces along South Moulton Street to encourage safe shopping and support independent brands. Want to try on for size? Book a one-on-one, socially distanced personal shopping appointment with us here. And there's 2 QR codes for you to either reach them on WhatsApp or an email. But in essence, what it's doing is taking some empty spaces and making them showrooms for people's products for one-on-one shopping appointments. Now, ideally, we'd fill those stores with stores. You know, the best thing for a town is to be fully leased. But if you can't be fully leased, it's better than a bare, empty store that hasn't been cleaned. And if you don't like this idea, I would at least put some graphics up in empty stores that talk about the town, what it offers, special events, and what the stores do that are open, that they're known for. So shopping experiences can be appointment-based. It's a good way to do it. Personal shopping that we've talked about, being a personal shopper for your best customers. And then virtual shopping. You know, you can get a customer into your store via Zoom or Facebook Live and give them a tour of your store and show them what you wanted to show them if they came in the store. You know, one of the things I did in my clothing stores was we would set an appointment for our best customers because we were an upper end men's clothing store. And we also had women's stores and an outdoor store. So we were good. We were a big deal. And anyways, we would then have a table set up with everything that we had pre-set up for our client appointment. Well, you can do that same thing now virtually. You could set up a table of outfits and products that you wanted to show a good customer and do a virtual appointment with them by doing a Zoom appointment or a Facebook Live appointment and show them the product you would have shown them if they were in the store. Talk about personalization. Here's another thing. You know that Shopify has a plugin called Tidio, which means you can have live chat going on your website. So you can be talking to the customer whether they're in your store or not. And you can certainly talk to them during a Zoom meeting or Facebook Live. So there's a way for personalization. So that another way that Shopify has for personalization is live inventory. They can show the customer how many sizes you have left in certain sizes, in certain products. So live inventory is a good personalization feature as well. And then thoughtful curation of items. That's another way of saying you got to merchandise your store and tell stories and create vignettes and make it interesting and know the traffic flow of your store and know the hot spots and the cold spots and know the store for how people shop it and set it up for the best experience. Come on. Oh. Okay, let's talk about revenue streams. One of the things that I think that we can celebrate right now is the notion that most customers have been told and introduced to this concept of buying local. And there's a movement alive and well in America to support the independently owned businesses and shop local and support their towns and how important towns are to the overall economy of the state. So here's something I want you all to know. For every $100 that's spent with a big box store, 70 of it leaves your county to go to wherever that big box is headquartered. So for every $100 spent at Walmart, 70 goes to Bentonville. For every $100 spent with Best Buy, 170 goes to Minneapolis. And for every 100 spent at Home Depot, 70 goes to Atlanta. But on the other end, if you shop with an independently owned store in your town, that 70 stays in your town and in your county and gets spent over and over again. One's called the multiplier effect, the other's called leakage. And we want the money staying in our county to get spent over and over again. So that's real important that you know that, your employees know that, and your customers know that. It's important to promote and support local businesses in your town. I've already talked about this, but secure, contactless, frictionless payment options are extremely important. If you don't know how to do it, reach out to an expert, reach out to somebody at the SBDC. I'm sure they have a digital native on board that can teach you exactly how to do that. And again, I forgot to mention this, but the SBDC, for most everything they do, is at no cost. So why would you try to figure this out on your own when a digital native could get it figured out for you in an hour? So know that. I've talked about causes and how important causes are, but be part of the change. Have a social conscience. Be engaged in your community. Be engaged with charitable drives that are going on in your town. Responsible sourcing. Use vendors and manufacturers that treat their employees fairly and have a good reputation for how they do business. And support diversity and equity. So customers want to know that you're bigger than the transaction that's going on in the store. They want you to believe in recycling and sustainability and things like that. So, and it's just not the millennials, although they're very plugged into it. Everybody's conscious of this now. So let's talk about business operations for a bit. I've already mentioned this, but take stock in your position. And what I mean by that is every business owner should know their cash flow break even. And what is that number? That number is what you have to do a month just to pay your bills. Every business owner should know that and should know how they're trending toward that. So you got to figure out how to get at least to your break even. That's your first goal. The next goal beyond break even is being able to pay yourself. You don't know how many business owners in their first years don't pay themselves. So we know that statistics will tell you that the average business takes 2 to 5 years to start making money. Now, some make it right away and some never make it, but 2 to 5 is the average. So, one of the reasons that we lose small businesses is they didn't have the capital to get them through the first 2 years or get them to the point in which they were making money. So take stock in your position and make the necessary changes to get to a break even as soon as you can. Assess your mindset. Are you ready to transition from survive to thrive? What surprised you during COVID? What were you prepared for? What's something new that you want to keep doing? There should be a ton of new things that you're doing that you should keep doing. There's some things that you used to do that are no longer relevant. There might be parts of your inventory that are no longer relevant. And you need to know that and make the appropriate changes. And you need to be energetic, full of energy. You need to be in a good mood. You need to be excited. You need to shake off the rust and pull out the agenda for events. I believe small towns are event driven. And even more importantly than the towns being event driven, I believe small retailers and restaurants and Hotels are event driven. So it's time to dust off your event guidelines and get small events going again. Okay. Understand your finances. What's your break-even point? What's your top 20%? What are your largest expense items? What can you tweak? So sharpen the pencil, count the beans, reevaluate your space, assess how much space you have, assess how you're using your space, look at your lease, talk with your landlord, brainstorm creative ideas. Listen, one thing I know for a fact, you don't get what you don't ask. So, if you haven't had a conversation with your landlord or your vendors by now, it's late because everybody's negotiable during this pandemic, and everybody has been evidently pretty aware of the situation and negotiable. So again, you don't get what you don't ask. Consider your staffing needs, evaluate how you're treating your team, know what's important to them beyond pay. Where can you offer more flexibility? Focus on quality associates, not quantity, and cross-train. If you have trouble hiring decent people that have a clue, then you're probably better off going with fewer people of a higher quality. So empower them, create opportunities, and cross-train them. But you may have to do it with less employees than you did in the past. And some folks have created positions that aren't your traditional face-to-face selling positions in a store, because some people are introverts and not cut out for that. But you may have a position for someone that has to run your e-commerce site and pack the boxes that need to be shipped. You may need someone to manage your inventory. You may need someone to do all your social media. And these positions may not be selling positions. They may be positions people could do from their home. So I'm talking about getting creative. I'm talking about the traditional is no longer traditional. And figuring out ways to slice and dice this, because it'll never be the same. Retail has been changed forever. So has restaurants. So know that and make the appropriate decisions. I said this before, I'm going to reemphasize it. Keep you and your employees and your customers safe to shop. Think long-term. Be clear with customers and employees about your expectations. Revisit cleaning expenses in line with the latest best product practices. A customer who is not willing to abide by your policies is likely not your best ideal customer. So know that and abide by that, and develop your 2.0 strategy. What's your mission statement? What's your vision and values? What gets you up in the morning? Why are you in business anyway? And what's important to you and your customers? Revisit that. Fall in love with your business again. What do you have that you can celebrate, and why? What can you celebrate with your staff? What can you celebrate with your customers? What can you celebrate with your town? What would a grand reopening look like for your store and your town? Listen, I tried to get the whole country to grand reopen in July. Back when we were moving quickly ahead with getting everyone vaccinated and the pandemic numbers were going down, I said, we have two things to celebrate: that we have the virus in retreat, and that Americans are supporting the concept of purchasing locally. So I wanted every town in America to grand reopen over July 4th and coincide with Biden's proclamation of 70% of the population being vaccinated by then, and families being able to get together and hug and kiss and shake hands and all those things. Thought it was a great weekend to do that. And I don't think most towns grand reopen, but I'm here to tell you that your own store can grand reopen. I mean, you got to have something compelling and something interesting to talk about. You got to have a destination statement. Okay. What's the macro perspective? What's the view from 30,000 feet? Look at your business in context with your town and in your category. Are you still relevant? Are you a business of the future? Are there gaps that you can fill that other stores vacated? Not necessarily real estate, but their products. Is there an opportunity for new revenue streams in your store based on what's been going on in your town? So that's the macro perspective. And then take a micro perspective. Understand your top selling platforms. What are new ways for you to get found? How can you increase your customer base? What are the new and alternative revenue streams that you can explore? Know this, hundreds of people have found your store for the first time because hundreds of people, thousands of people discovered shopping online during fourth quarter of 2020. Even baby boomers learned how to shop online and they love it. And they have more money than the millennials. So a new demographic to focus on are the baby boomers. And they love the convenience. Here's the 4 C's of the consumer. Before I end, know these 4 C's. What are the 4 C's for the consumer today? Convenience is number 1. Convenience, not only shopping with you in your store, but how to shop with you online conveniently. Caution is number 2. In 2020, caution was number 1 and convenience was number 2. In 2021, convenience trumps caution. Third was cause. You having causes bigger than just the transaction that takes place in your store. And the 4th C is community, giving back to your community. So the 4 C's for the consumer right now are convenience, caution, cause, and community. Okay? Just like you should know that. Come on. Omni-channel and all channel. Listen, there's 5 ways a customer can get a product from you now. So they can shop with you like they used to and buy it in the store. They can shop with you online and pick it up in the store. And 67% of those people usually end up buying something when they come to pick their product up. They can buy it online and have you bring it out to their car or curbside shopping, BOPS. Buy online, pick up in store, buy online, pick up at the curb. That you can locally deliver the product right to the customer's door. By the way, they feel that's the safest way to get a product from a store is local delivery within a reasonable mile radius, 1 mile, 5 mile radius. And then lastly, you can ship the product to them via a major carrier, UPS, FedEx, USPS, DHL. So, there are 5 different ways, and the consumer, the 5 A's for the consumer right now are anywhere, anyhow, any place, and any time. So you got to be able to execute on those 5 different ways for you to be all channel or omni-channel. Consistency and a seamless experience from both your website and in your store. Secure and seamless payments. Fast delivery. What do I mean by that? Well, the consumer thinks they don't care whether you're an independently owned business. They've gotten used to 1-day or 2-day delivery, and they expect that from you as well. And do it with elegance and ease. Easier said than done. So personalization, incentives, causes, and purpose are big pieces of the consumer expectations in today's world. And retailtainment your way. Immersive, Instagrammable experiences, aka retailtainment, must bring the brand alive in ways that digital alone can't. So not only do you have to learn how to do business online, you have to do it in a way that entertains your customer. because the customer is looking to be entertained. So serve, don't sell. I don't think anybody needs to be hard selling right now. I think you need to be empathetic, and I think you need to be kind, because there's lots of folks out there that are hurting, that are just don't feel good, don't feel right, are lonely, looking for socialization, looking for fun in their life. So most people have something going on. Almost everybody has a struggle going on that you know nothing about. So the safest way to teach or reach people and work with them is through kindness and empathy. And that would be my golden rule. And then you can schedule a session with me virtually. And it doesn't have to be today. It could be today, but it could be done on other days virtually. So get a hold of your SBDC advisor. If you're interested in having an hour-long one-on-one virtually. And now we are open for questions. Shira, does anybody have any questions? Is there anything in the chat room?
Yeah, it looks like a little while ago, we had a question about staffing. Businesses are facing an unprecedented shortage of staff. How can they remain open to serve their communities?
And the question is?
How can they remain open to serve their communities while dealing with staffing shortages?
Well, boy, if I could answer that, I wouldn't be here probably. But listen, everybody's having a problem with it. Everybody's understaffed. I love the stuff that's out on the internet right now, which is, look, we are understaffed. Everybody's understaffed. At least be kind to the people that showed up. It's not their fault. So you just have to do the best you can with the people that you have. And there's no easy answer. The answer is treating the current employees as well as you can in a productive manner that makes them want to be there, that makes them love the whole concept as much as you do. I like sales associates that tell customers about their favorite products and tell customers why they work there. I work here because this is my favorite store on the planet. And let me tell you why. And they know your destination statement. All your associates should know that. So you've got to make it, listen, I know there are stores with just the owner working the store. So I know it can be done, but it's not easy. And it takes some thinking out of the box sometimes. So no silver bullet. There's no such thing right now. Other than reaching out to the folks that used to work with you that were unemployed, maybe they're more apt to come back now. So I would call them a warm lead as opposed to cold calling people to hire them. So go after your former staff, see if they're interested again.
All right, thank you. Someone else was asking if they can email you directly for a meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I believe it is best to go through your local SBDC office to be connected with Mark.
Yes.
Yes, so
I want the local advisor to know that you're seeking an appointment with me. Yeah, because I'm going to invite the local counselor to sit on the virtual one-on-one too. Because when I do live visits, which I hope we'll get back to when we move out of this surging pandemic. What was I going to say? Shoot, just lost my train of thought. I have an advisor with me when I do live one-on-ones. Why wouldn't I have one virtually? Because they're going to be your follow-up. They're going to be the person you reach out to locally to help you. I'm a gypsy. I travel all over the country, and both virtually and physically. So Your main resource is your SBDC.
Well, that's a great point, Mark. And I think too, thinking about it, as you talked about earlier, a lot of the rural communities that we're serving and that we're all from today are event driven, right? And they are local. And so Mark's got, in a lot of ways, tremendous blueprint for you and can apply that to your particular situation, but you still want to have the local value that a local advisor can bring with that. You pair those two things together, that plus you is how you're going to get the most out of your secret sauce right there.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know what I always tell people, Greg? I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink.
That's right.
Right. So it
Especially
helps
not in
to
one
have
visit.
someone, it helps having someone like you go in 30 days later and say, you know, we talked about you redoing something on your website. Did you ever get that done? You know, there's nothing wrong with a little follow-up. You know, everybody takes a little follow-up.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so anyone who is interested in a meeting with Mark, reach out to your local SBDC office. And if you're not sure what office that is, you can find on the Virginia SBDC website, there's a list of office locations by locality. So you can always look there. And then the local office can connect you with Mark. And then another question we had was just clarification, Mark. Did you say that businesses should have at least 2 to 5 years of expenses saved before opening a retail business?
Well, it would be nice to at least have, I already told you the average is 8 weeks. So people having 2 to 5 years is a reach and a huge high goal. I would rather you have 6 months of working capital. That would be awesome. It's just a little more reassuring than having 8 weeks. But no, most stores don't have 2 to 5 years worth of savings. That's almost unheard of. But there are some small businesses where this is a hobby. It's not a business for them. Their wherewithal, their spouse, their partner, whoever may make plenty of money for both of them. And they're doing this as a way to find purpose in their life. So I am a believer that the definition of success is different from everybody. Some want to make money and make a living. Some want to have purpose. Some want to do it because they find it fun. But success is driven by a person's own desires.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, feel free to just ask them yourself. We've got about 20 more minutes scheduled. We don't have to use it all, but if anybody has questions, we've got Mark for another 20 minutes. And I don't think I actually introduced Greg, who's been our peanut gallery today. Greg Durazio is the assistant director at the Central Virginia SBDC office. So thank you, Greg, for answering all the questions throughout. And apparently, you passed the test. You did know the answers.
I mean, it was like a moderate B, which is what I always aim for in school too, right? Decent B, right? I did okay.
Greg, Greg, you were my straight man.
That's right. Well, I tell you,
you're my Ed McMahon.
That's right. Well, you got the jokes, so yeah. So I had to go a different route on that for sure. But I just love working with the SBDC, and for those of you who maybe haven't had a relationship with an advisor yet, for me, it's always a real special thing when you have a first meeting with a new client and they're like, wow, somebody can actually help me with all these questions that are driving me crazy all the time. One of the most important things that we do is help you kind of determine what the key decisions are to be made and then figure out what you need to make them. That's really, that, and of course, access to resources, things like Mark, things like capital, whatever your particular needs are. But we're here basically to level the playing field for you. So that some of these things that, consulting in some cases might be cost prohibitive, in other cases it's not, but at least if we can get you really kind of targeted in the right areas, they're going to have the biggest impact for you. That can be such a value to you. For me personally, one of the things that I love is I'm kind of like Mark. I'm not I'm not as excited about helping a $5 million company become a $10 million company. I like to help somebody, cover the rent, right? And then eventually build a business enough so now they're covering a mortgage instead of a rent. And now they're helping their number one manager pay their rent, and they, so on and so forth. And I just love seeing that in communities. I'm based in Louisa, so that whole Central Virginia area, I just really enjoy in a lot of the same ways that Mark talked about, being here, being a resource for you. We roll up sleeves and just help out.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. A couple more questions have come in from Leanne. Mark, do you have any tips in getting into big box stores like Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Anthropologie, etc.?
Getting in, meaning your product into the higher tier. Is that what they mean?
Leanne, is that what you
Yes.
were meaning?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we teach a class, the Virginia SBDC class. I think it's up on their website, VA SBDC, called the Food Business 101, and it's particularly suited for people trying to get their product or something they're doing up into the higher tier retailers. Food Business 101. But my advice is you got to find the local buyer for the Trader Joe's or the Nordstroms or the Whole Foods or retailers and restaurants or grocery and restaurants like that. So they're typically managed by regional buyers. And your first step will be to get into a number of stores in a particular region. So they might, you meet with the buyer, and you have to do it like you would do it with any other vendor. You have to, have your marketing together. You have to have your packaging together. You have to see what their rest of their displays look like and be prepared to have a display that's in keeping with what they expect in terms of execution. And you have to be top of mind customer service. They expect you to serve your product all along when it's in their store. So you'll end up in a half dozen of their stores first, and then they'll begin to read whether the product is selling well or not in their format and invite you to go to more stores. So the first step is getting into a couple stores through a regional buyer.
Do you think I can find the contacts through LinkedIn, or is there a better way to find the local or regional buyer?
I do both. I use LinkedIn, and then I Google their corporate and look for merchandising and the buying staff.
Thank you.
Sure.
And another question in the chat from Claire: organizing and promoting events can be expensive. What are some ways or ideas that have worked in the past to offer compelling local events on a budget? And I'm going to, before Mark answers, I'm going to shamelessly plug his workshop he's doing with us tomorrow.
Exactly.
Just that. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for anyone that is interested, Mark will be going into a lot more detail. And I will include the link to register for that in a follow-up email I'm sending after this class. So now, Mark, I'll let you answer the question.
Yes, well, that was an important answer, because that's exactly what I'm focusing on tomorrow. Tomorrow's webinar is called Co-opetition and Eventacular. So it's the notion of, and I believe this wholeheartedly, by the way, towns that work together do better than towns that don't. And all boats rise with the tide. So co-opetition talks about competition, the fusion of competition and cooperation. And the towns that work best have a group of business owners that work together. Now and then Eventacular is how to run an effective event in your town and in your store that provides a benefit to your store and to the local stores in that town. So I'm a big believer as we plan events in small towns, it's not for how well the vendors that come from out of town that you sell spaces to. So it's not your chicken on a stick vendor I'm worried about. I want the local stores and the local restaurants to do well on the day of the event. So it's important that you execute the event in a manner in which benefits the local stores and local restaurants. And that's what tomorrow's is all about. Now, your question asked about expensive. Well, the only expensive advertising for an event is print or radio or TV, traditional medias. And if it's a town-wide event, I want you doing it together and doing these things from a co-op standpoint. Because one of the values of having an event is it can be promoted far more extensively than you can promote your own store on your own budget. So it's a way of getting your store found based on promoting the entire town as opposed to a single store. But my advice is to do all your marketing online, or most of it online, where the cost is not high at all. So I want you creating a buzz for your event, whether it's in your store or in your town, for a couple weeks or so prior to the event ever happening. I want you creating a buzz. I want you to tell the customer what they can look forward to. And then if it's a tab wine event, I want to know what you're doing in your store special that day. Because one of the secrets to an effective event is that all the stores and restaurants have decorated and done displays in concert with the event. Like, let's say you're having a July 4th parade. I want every window in the town July 4th motif. I don't want the stores and restaurants to look like an afterthought. I want them to look like they're front and center and part of the event. And as a result, I tell that a store owner or a restaurant owner or both should be on the committee that plans the event. I want a business owner being able to raise their hand and say things like, whoa, if you close that street, that's where our 3 best restaurants are. Or don't put the food trucks on that street, put them at the other end of town so they don't affect my local restaurants. You know, you need the voice of reason sometimes in planning these events. So I'm here to tell you that if you use the internet like you should, promoting an event shouldn't be that expensive for you.
And I'll tag on there a little bit. Former newspaper guy here, editor and reporter and all that. You know, when you're thinking about connecting for those print opportunities, you really do want them to be earned media instead of paid media. And so a couple of things on that, when you're working together on that, they're a lot more likely to say, oh, this is a community kind of thing or that, versus you having a special sale where you're going to offer everybody 20% off isn't really news to them. It's an ad, right? It's an ad for a sale. So we have to try to think of those things that have a genuine event kind of flavor to them and are cooperative. And so then that way we can try to leverage to get that earned media. And then, you know, that can be a lot of times that's something that's going to be on a directory, right? A free directory listing. And so you get it in there. That's a great place to be. You'd love to get a story if you can, but, you know, I mean, a lot of times it is going to be that. So that 30 days out, as Marc was talking about, so important, not just for your customers, but also for anything that you might be reaching out about. You know how tight your schedule is, and so is everyone else. So trying to get that, you know, in their head that October 23rd is when this thing is going to happen. You know, that's an important piece of it. And then the other piece if it's a town-wide event that you're tapping into, I love that point, Marc, because the other thing is if it is the 4th of July parade, there's probably the town or somebody out there, tourism department or somebody who is looking for things to promote the town parade, the town event that is coming up. So if your window has this great 4th of July look to it, then you have them come out and, you know, maybe they come and take the picture, or maybe you put it and you share it out there. And maybe social media.
Greg, and maybe they'll run a contest or a raffle.
Absolutely.
You know, don't miss going to so-and-so because they're running a big contest today. Right? Always. The other rule of thumb is do it early enough, but not too early, kind of like a wedding invitation. Not too early so they forget,
Mhm.
but not too late so they can plan to be there and come to it.
Absolutely.
And what about a press release? What about trying to get the paper to do an article about your store?
Absolutely.
Right?
And you make it around, you want it there. Some local papers will still do like the new business profile or that kind of thing. And that's great. But if not, or if you're not new, if there's not a particular hook to it that's got business meat to it, then you might need to be the story, right? What's the compelling thing about you? Start with that destination statement and think about what else is going on that makes you a compelling story for a profile or something along those lines too. We want to make sure that we're feeding them that news that they want.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. Thank you
Good
both.
stuff, Greg. Good stuff.
Karen asked if the event tomorrow will be recorded. Yes, it will. This one is also being recorded, and I will be posting both of those on the Central Virginia SBDC YouTube page. So we also follow Mark's advice and put things on YouTube. So at some point after the event, I don't want to promise I'm going to get those posted by the end of this week, Karen, because it's a very busy event week for us, but soon, yes. Sorry to be a little vague. I'm just not sure how much time I'm going to have. And then one other question for you, Mark. Do you have any advice on applying for government contracts? Where are opportunities posted for Virginia?
That question should go to Greg.
I can get
Greg, I'm bailing to you because I don't know that much about how to get into the government. SBDC teaches whole courses on it, right?
We absolutely do. I know we have one coming up soon there. A lot of people hear about the SWAM certification, which has some great value in terms of getting you some credibility. Its core function is getting you eligible, for not eligible to sell, but it advantages you in the sales with the with agencies. So the platform where that all happens is the EVA platform, and so that is where buyers for agencies, localities, and whatnot put out their needs for procurement, and then you respond in the RFP process, which can be a challenge, right? It's not necessarily just a click and dropping in your pricing on a certain thing. It can be a pretty detailed and different in each particular opportunity. And so we definitely recommend that you would go to the EVA course that we have. Shira, do you know when we have our next one of those?
Yes, that is on Thursday. So I'm going to put a couple of events in the chat. Yes, a very busy week, because we have Courtney Mustin from the DSBS, and I am not going to remember what that stands for right now, but she is fantastic. She's teaching a class for state and local government contracting using EVA. So the electronic procurement portal for the state of Virginia this Thursday. So I'm going to put that in the chat, as well as we have Lisa Wood from PTAC coming next Thursday, the 14th, to talk about federal government contracting and some tips and tricks. And they're both excellent. So we've got a couple government contracting classes coming up for anyone who's interested in that. And I'm going to put those links in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Shira. And yeah, so that EVA platform is basically all different localities, whether it's state agencies or, your counties, your towns, your school districts. They all, in certain prescribed cases, use that platform for their procurement needs. And so that's where it's great. It's great as a clearinghouse, like of all of these different opportunities from those different levels of government too. But then the federal is, as Shira said, in the federal system.
We good, Shira?
Any other questions in the chat?
Yes, got those in the chat. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. Was someone just talking and trying to ask a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I work with small retail businesses in small towns, and often what I do, I take them virtually online, or creating a virtual twin, VR, so to speak. A lot of the folks are struggling to figure out the e-commerce side of it. I put them online, again, creating this whole virtual walkthrough tour of their retail location. but they struggle on the back end to create a e-commerce. I know you talked about Shopify. Are there other platforms that I should point them to?
Well, yes, there are lots of platforms. Lightspeed is one. WooCommerce is one. GoDaddy has one. There's actually a ton of different platforms that you can use. WordPress is one that's also highly recommended. So there are a bunch of platforms that you can use, and we also somewhere we have a full e-commerce webinar that covers all of that, and that's listed on the Virginia SBDC site as well. But good question. There's lots of, I don't get paid by Shopify or anything. I just found that one was easy to work with, and that a lot of people that I've interviewed and counseled use Shopify. So it seems to be a good one. But there are a bunch. You could just Google e-commerce and there'd be tons of platforms that would come up.
Yeah, and sometimes those things are issues that are problems with platforms, but sometimes the issue is traffic, right? You can have a really great store, brick and mortar store, and nobody's walking into it, and it might feel the same as having a really great e-commerce experience that's set up, but no one's really visiting the site and coming there. And so, we also then start to think about, okay, is the platform the right fit for what we need the overall experience to bring, right? Are we getting them there correctly? How are we reaching out? I know I've actually worked with a couple of folks who are really great artisans or makers of some kind, and they were on Etsy and they felt frustrated that they were paying Etsy the cut that they were paying them. And so then they built their own website, at which point they weren't getting any sales. And then that's when they came to me, and we kind of learned together that, the thing you were paying Etsy for wasn't necessarily the buying platform and all that. It was the traffic that they were bringing. And so in the same way, when Mark talks about the SEO on your website, that's a really important piece of it too. How are we getting people either through organic search? Are we doing it through content where we're bringing them back to the platform? Are we doing it through paid digital ads? What's the strategy we're doing to get them there? Because at some point, you're setting them up with the assets they need to do well on the platform. But that is a different proposition than getting people to engage with the platform. And so I would say first for you as a business owner, make sure that you're promising them that, not, I don't want them to come to you and say, hey, nobody came to my site, but it looks great, right? We did exactly what we said we were going to do. So making sure that you're safe in that way and the expectations, the way they come. And then if you are going to be out bringing more traffic to them in some way, then that's a separate service that you'd be providing, and consulting them in that way, or working with somebody else who's going to help them on the marketing of getting people to actually traffic that cool asset that you've helped them create.
Well, I've actually started using the QRs that you had shown earlier, and that's really worked for the foot traffic, actually being able to scan it and go directly into the virtual shop. That's worked out great for us. But again, the big thing is having them linked to an e-commerce site. A lot of folks just don't have them on Main Street.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We are at our time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email to all of the participants that will have the slides that Mark used today, as well as a link to fill out an anonymous survey. Any feedback you can offer us is incredibly helpful for us moving forward, planning more events in the future and bringing excellent people like Mark to join us. And again, Mark is doing another class with us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Again, it's online, and that link will also be in my email. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Mark, for your incredible insights. And Greg, thanks for hopping in and answering a lot of questions with us. And it was great seeing everyone today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. You'll see me when you least expect it.
Thanks, Mark. Take care,
You're
everybody.
welcome. Bye.